Hello, this is a presentation about training managers in acquisition for the ETM Conference 2012. My name is Lieutenant Commander Paul Pine, and for those of you who haven't seen me since the last conference, yes, I do now have a beard. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I'm away and so are some of my team who work in HRTSG. I'm currently away doing a Defence Acquisition Management MSc at Cranfield, and my team are also at Cranfield doing acquisition employment training, but more about that later on. What I'm going to tell you about this morning is what is acquisition, why the current process of training needs analysis is not very good, look at current projects and some of the challenges we face, and also look at some of the opportunities for training managers within acquisition. What is acquisition? Acquisition uses a process called CADMID, which stands for Concept, Assessment, Demonstration, Manufacture, In-Service and Disposal. I'm sure you've all heard of it before, but actually how many people really understand it? And more importantly, how we use it to manage the training defence line of development. Let me give you a quick example that will hopefully help you understand. This is my son. My son wants a car. Unfortunately, his aspirations don't meet our budget, so we have to realign his aspirations. Now, I could also use CADMID for this. The first part of CADMID is the concept. Actually, although my son wants a car, what he really needs to do is to travel. He needs to travel from A to B, A to C, and A to D. Could be college, cinema, friend's house, doesn't really matter. He really needs to travel. What happens then? Well, a car could fit this concept, but actually so could a lot of other things. And this is where we move into the assessment phase. A taxi, bicycle, motorbike, or bus could all fulfill that requirement to travel. Now, there are a few issues here with regard to what we're allowed and not allowed to do. Firstly, Mrs. Pine won't let my son ride a motorbike. Secondly, my son can't really be bothered to ride a bicycle. That leaves us with 3 options left that we can take to the next phase, which is demonstration. In the demonstration phase, we can then look at these options and actually try them out. So for a taxi, we can actually go and catch a taxi and see how that works. Unfortunately, we found a taxi was a bit expensive to run. We can try the car. Again, expensive to run, but also to buy. There's upfront costs. And of course, when we assess a bus, we find it is affordable to both buy and run. So therefore, we've managed to demonstrate all those options and come up with the best one. In acquisition, this is where we'd actually put someone on contract and then go into the manufacture phase. So in this particular example, in the manufacture phase, we need to buy a bus pass. Quite easy. Off we go then to in-service. And what we find is we got the bus pass. My son's very happy with his bus pass. And then we go on a bus. The problem is, he gets on the wrong bus. He gets shown off and his bus pass taken away from him. What did we forget to do? We forgot to buy the training. So back to the manufacture phase. What we should buy when looking at all the defence lines of development is the solution, the bus pass, plus all the other DLODs, especially training. So now, when we go into the in-service phase, we have a trained son. He's been down to the bus stop, shown how to use the timetable, and shown how to identify the right bus, get on at the right bus stop, and get off at the right bus stop. He's now been trained, so we're all very happy, and it works. On the bus, off he goes. The disposal phase then is how we come to the end of that life of that project. In this case, in 12 months' time when the bus pass comes. So we need to think about how to dispose of it. Relatively easy for a bus pass, but actually thinking through life, what we need to do is make sure that we've allowed a sufficient resource to pay for next year's bus pass. So that all fits into the through life capability management and assurance of all this process. And that basically is CADMID in a nutshell. Training needs analysis and why it isn't very good. The current process of training needs analysis you can see here below the CADMID process. Now, the actual process is split into distinct parts: scoping, OTA, which is operational task analysis, TGA, training gap analysis, and TOA, training options analysis. Actually, when we look at that in the context of acquisition and the full CADMID process, we find there are a number of things wrong with it. Actually, the acquisition process starts much earlier than the TNA process, but in some cases, the TNA process, if it don't do it late enough, you haven't got information available on the equipment you're trying to analyse. We often rush and try to produce training early and miss a ready for training date, and also we get the wrong training in for the in-service date. The current TNA process isn't bad, but it's the way that it's implemented isn't very good. Why is that? Well, the process came out in 1997. That process has gone through very limited changes in that time. The last major update being 2007, but actually it was in its current form in 2004. This is just a quick example on this slide of all the changes that's happened in acquisition in that time, and hence why the current process doesn't take into account through life capability management, the defence lines of development, and the fact that up in Abbey Wood now there is a whole one organisation called Defence Equipment and Support. Current projects then. In the TNA cell where I work, and the other TMs up in Abbey Wood are working on a number of exciting projects that's going to take us through to the next couple of decades. Firstly, the Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carrier. Being built by BAE Systems, Thales and Babcock, we're procuring 2 platforms which should be coming into service between 2016 and 2020 at a cost of between £5 to £7 billion for both platforms. Equally, Type 26 frigate, replacing the current Type 23 frigate, we're going to buy 13 platforms. They'll be coming into service around 2021, costing around £250 to £350 million each. And if you thought those were expensive, the SSBN replacement programme, currently referred to as Successor, is a massive UK-wide programme looking at the whole submarine enterprise, looking at getting the replacements in around 2030 and costing between 15 and 20 billion pound. The challenge we face currently then is that the equipment programme in the Ministry of Defence is currently over budget by £30 billion over its next 10 years spending profile. £30 billion. Equally, when we look at the training element of that, this is what we're trying to work out in training needs analysis. We look at past examples to help us with those costings, and in the past 7 years we've bought 2 major training solutions: Maritime Composite Training System and Maintainer Training for Type 45. Between them, they've cost £150 million. When we look at the challenge then for the next 10 years with our £30 billion overdraft, and looking at all the major platforms coming in, those I've mentioned, plus quite a few others as well, we're looking at spending a significant amount of money, billions of pounds. The opportunity for TMs then, if we can articulate the right requirements through doing something like training needs analysis, and if we can save just 10%, we are contributing by potentially saving hundreds of millions of pounds for taxpayers. Well worth doing, I think. And that leads me to the opportunities for training managers. How can we help practically? Well, FOST is looking at setting up a maritime training acquisition organisation, both based in the headquarters, but a good proportion of the team moving to Abbey Wood near Bristol. This is going to bring together the current people who work on this activity, the HRTSG TNA cell that I'm in and my team, The FOSS training manager is already embedded up in Abbey Wood, working on Type 45 and Queen Elizabeth. The Submarine Training and Education Programme, the FOSS TBTU here in Collingwood, and the Maritime Training Systems team who are part of DNS. Bringing this all together should help to provide a more coherent organisation that can articulate requirements for the training and defence line of development and make sure that we have sufficient training at an affordable cost. The processes are going to change as well. Out goes the old T&A programme, and in comes a more project management based, where we do some planning, we scope the activity, we capture requirements, and that could be the form in acquisition user requirements and system requirements for simulators, but equally OPSs and FTSs for those training solutions. We can then try to implement those, deliver them through life, and maintain them to make sure they're current. How are we going to do this and make sure we do it well? The first thing we need to do is invest in people, and that comes back to my point earlier of why myself and my team aren't here today. The first thing that the team are doing is acquisition employment training, a 5-week course teaching them all about acquisition and how they should work within it. Another course many of the team are doing is simulation employment training, again another 5-week course that enable the team to articulate proper requirements for simulators and advanced trainers that do cost tens of millions of pounds. Finally then, when you're moving on in your career and you've done 1 or 2 jobs in acquisition, the Defence Acquisition Management MSc is available and helps you to critically analyse the processes we make so you can contribute to make better progress through better processes. What this is key to do, and what is already highlighted, is that to do this better we need to change attitudes and behaviours. So by investing in people and educating them, we can teach them about the industrial strategies that are out there, how things are changing, and how it all fits into the high-level government focusing on the future in things like the SDSR. It also teaches us the proper commercial ways that we should be dealing with industry, not seeing them as the enemy, but actually embracing them as a partner within an appropriate commercial context. Equally, it shows us how, working through DNS, we can develop training solutions for the Royal Navy and Royal Marines, but also make sure that we can connect up to the Army and Air Force training solutions to ensure we have a training capability that spans the whole defence-wide outputs. And that's what we're going to try to do for maritime training. This quick presentation hopefully enlightened you to what is acquisition and the CADMID process, why the current T&A process is dead and we need to move on to other things. You've seen some of our current projects and the massive challenges we face, but also we recognise the opportunities that training managers can actually enhance and make things better within that context. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.